Hello. Terry Knight.
Oh, Kelly Guest and
Phil Wilson.
Live at the Loft. And Phil, please try to explain it to the best of your ability how music stations program their music, because I have never been able to answer that. Have you?
No.
And people want to know, and then they want to argue and tell you how it should be done, as if we have any effect.
Yeah. Why does that song play at the same time every morning?
I mean, well, it basically comes down to what I talked about earlier, is that trying to find the thing that appeals to the most people at any given time. That's really what it comes down to. And radio, we learned long ago, is, you know, as much as people may say they listen 8 hours a day, they don't really listen 8 hours a day. They kind of come and they go, they come and they go. And the job of a music radio station is to be playing the most popular, least offensive music. And when I say offensive, I don't mean, you know, sexually explicit or something like that. I mean something that would cause somebody to turn off the radio. At any given time, somebody tunes in. So when you tune in at 12 after, you want to be able to hear a song you know, you're comfortable with, and you know, you can sing along to. I mean, that's really the ideal.
And that's why there has been so little variety, and it keeps getting more and more generic.
Right, there's a limited number of songs that have that kind of appeal that you want to, you know, in a music station. Now there are different music stations that appeal to different types of people. A younger, something that would appeal to a teenager, tends to be, you know, smaller playlist, you know, songs that play every 90 minutes. For you know, an adult audience, it's, you know, a song that will play maybe every 7 hours. But I mean, there is a limited number of songs that have that universal appeal, that are popular enough, that are familiar enough, that can make up a playlist. They have found, you know, we've found in the last few years that people are less and less tolerant of these little tiny playlists, and they want more expanded playlists. The problem is, the bigger the playlist gets, the less time they spend listening. It tends to, or it just tends to throw things off. So the reason music is played over and over again is because it's simple. We want you, when you tune in, to hear a song you like, a song you're comfortable with, a song that you know, appeals to you, that will make you keep coming back. Problem is knowing how many times you've played it, how often you've played it, and that sort of thing. So we choose music based on a lot of stations used to do it based on the music charts, how songs were selling, because selling determined the popularity. And then it evolved into research, where we would gather groups of people together in a room, and we would play songs, pieces of songs for them, and they would rate them on a scale of 1 to 5 or whatever, and then that made up the playlist. So it was always, and then there's a lot of just, you know, guess, you know, yeah, it sounds good, it sounds like what we play on our radio station, it's a artist everybody knows, and that was the determinant. So it's all a matter of tailoring a radio station playlist to the way the listeners listen to it. So.
You had a...
I was just thinking about focus groups. I mean, how much really information did you get from focus groups, and how much did you use of that information?
Well, I mean, you try to use as much as you can, because you don't want to bring people in and talk to them and get their input and not pay any attention to it. Now, if it didn't necessarily, you know, look, everybody, clearly the one thing that everybody would say that we'd bring in and say, I don't like commercials. Well, you know, I can't do anything about the commercials. That's really how we make our living. That's what we're all about. So you can't use all of it, but you can try to minimize it, and you minimize the negatives and sort of amplify the positives.
So with all of that in mind, how do people get exposed to new stuff? I mean, it's not breaking on the radio like it used to.
No, it's not. You know, but I would contend that you're going to hear still a good amount of new music in stations that are focused on a younger audience. Those of us that are, you know, over the age of 35 and still crave hear new music, have to seek it out a little bit more. That's why you see radio stations like college radio stations that used to be incredibly popular with those that were seeking new music aren't as popular as they used to be, simply because there are so many more outlets to find new music. You can find it online now. And that's really sort of become the de facto place where people look for new music. So those radio stations that are paying attention to what people are downloading and listening to online and incorporating that into their playlist are on the right track. But yeah, there's probably not as much new music out there.
So then that's where local tone radio would come in, though.
Yeah, local
Right?
tone radio
As
is,
far as
and a lot of
at least
internet stuff.
local.
Yeah.
Local.
You know, we're a very much a niche. You know, the independent music world is pretty niche in and of itself. Even a national, international, independent label or independent artists that don't have big label deals, don't have big, you know, representation. There's a lot of that music out there. We've gone even further than that, saying it's independent and it's local. So there's a finite number, but there's an amazing amount of really great music that comes right out of Minnesota and the Twin Cities especially. There are, you know, so people have called it, you know, the land of 10,000 bands, because there are a lot of different songs, a lot of different bands. You tune local tone radio, you're going to hear anything from Irish pipe music to thrash metal. So it kind of runs the gamut. But what online has allowed people to do is have more control. You know, if you're familiar with Pandora, or if you're familiar with Last.fm or Slacker, there are abilities for you to customize your playlist of songs that you want to hear, the artists you want to hear. If you want to hear new music, you can. If you don't, you can just block it out. So there's a lot more control because it's a two-way medium rather than a one-way.
It's like making your own radio station.
You can make your own radio station. Whereas local tone is probably the sort of the happy medium between radio as you know it now, that fixed playlist, and user control, because it's not customized per listener, it's customized per crowd. So when you vote on local tone radio, you're part of the voting process. You're part of the control process.
Which is so cool because, and again, it's localtoneradio.com, and this really deals with stuff that comes right out of here. Which I'm not a native Minnesotan, and I always knew, even in California, when, you know, we had your replacements and all that kind of stuff. I was amazed at how many great bands, the suburbs, came out of here. And when so I've always recognized this as a hub. So what a cool thing. But the other thing that I think is interesting about this is that and tell me if you see the parallel here. Just like radio has pushed itself into the realm of having a tough time developing talent anymore, because the ways that the means that we all used to use to come up, they're not there right now, or they're going away. Same thing kind of in music. So of course we know when U2 drops a new album, because they're U2. But otherwise you have to be somewhere, you have to go almost from zero to being at the top of the record label heap to be pushed by the big guns. Or how else are they getting out there besides things like localtoneradio.com or whatever?
Where you're finding more and more grassroots efforts by bands that have decided to make a decent living out of, you know, appealing to a much smaller group, not necessarily going for the big hit. Yes, everybody wants a big hit. Every band that gets together wants a big hit. But that's being redefined. You know, what is a big hit? It could be that you're appealing to a certain segment of audience and dominating that certain segment of audience, or your mass appeal or whatever. So, but you're seeing a lot more grassroots efforts, bands that will, you know, for example, MySpace is proliferated by, you know, bands. I mean, that's what MySpace is now. It's probably the band outlet. Everybody has a MySpace page. You can get the music up there, but they can also market people to come to their MySpace page. They can, you know, build a relationship between the fan and the band, and that's really what Local Tone is about. We want to build that relationship and help those that are fans of local music find and listen to local music. So that's really what we're about too. So, and there's a lot more direct contact from band to fan now.
Yeah, I remember when we were kids, when I mean, it was very rare that they would ever put the words down. I mean, and there was no going to lyrics.com to find it. You had to figure it out yourself. And even the names of the band members, you'd see pictures sometimes. And now, I mean, I became a fan of U2 on Facebook, and it's YouTube posted a new video, and it's freaking Bono driving around Manhattan talking about the tour and blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the car with Bono. You know, I mean, seriously. I mean, it's so different. But do you think you just brought this whole interview a little bit full circle when you said, because we talked about this with media and radio and everything, you said grassroots. So is everything going to get more splintered, Phil, or is it going to? So what's the landscape going to be like?
It'll be interesting. You know, I think that's still yet to be determined. I think if you come back to standard media, what is the landscape going to look like? Well, imagine what the landscape was for TV when there was no cable. We all remember it. We remember the only 3 channels, and then UHF came along, and there was public television. It's like, wow, you know, that was a 4th channel. It's incredible. And you know, now with cable and digital cable, you know, there are hundreds of channels.
Yeah.
So that's what the landscape looks like. There's smaller pieces of pie and less big hits. It's the whole concept of the long tail. So.
But the pie, how do we promote our pie?
Yeah.
I think that's very
There are websites for that.
On that note.
Yeah, let's break because I have a couple of, I've been saving these. We've got some of the juicy questions for Phil. I know, these are the ones that he's been dreading.
Settle up, Phil.
Okay.